Looking for a bank you can trust? Look no further than Home Trust Bank, the premier banking service provider of our region and dedicated sponsor of Talking Ship.
Jeff, did you know that for nearly 100 years, Home Trust Bank has been building relationships with customers based on integrity and trust? Whether you need an account, investment help, or a home or business loan, they've got you covered.
I did. I actually refinanced my house with Home Trust. Headquartered in Asheville, Home Trust employs people who live in our neighborhoods and care deeply about our community.
Choose Home Trust Bank for all your financial needs, because when it comes to banking, trust matters. Visit them today at hdb.com.
Let's talk some ship!
Woo!
Greetings, shipheads, and welcome to Talkin' Ship, the Venture Asheville podcast, where we talk about issues and topics in entrepreneurship. We are the Venture Asheville team. Venture Asheville is the high-growth entrepreneurship initiative of the Economic Development Coalition for Asheville-Buncombe County. We build entrepreneurs and get startups funded. I'm Jeffrey Kaplan, this ship's captain, director of Venture Asheville, and lover of UNCA's basketball team. Go Bulldogs! Last night, UNCA debuted at the NCAA tournament where they got a proper shellacking. I say that because it's St. Patty's Day. A proper shellacking by UCLA's. I don't know what their mascot is. I don't care. It was a
Bruins.
Bruins. Thank you, Jay Walker.
Yeah.
Go Gators. What all I have to say about the game was it was not a great game, but it was amazing to be at Bear's Smokehouse for the official UNCA watch party, and an unbelievable amount of the students, locals, people of all ages, all walks of life were all there in their Bulldog blue cheering on UNCA. I'd never seen such school spirit in this town, and it was wonderful to see. So really loving UNCA's basketball team, especially Amadou Sila, one of our NIL. We did an NIL deal last year. We have 5 student athletes. One of them is Amadou, and he is one of the official Startup Daddy All-Stars. He made it into the game. He scored 2 points and a free throw. So 3 points to Startup Daddy's All-Stars.
Yeah, Amadou.
With me, as always, is the wonderful, smart, talented, considerate, and creative Juliana Moon Walker, our master of interactive media. Moon Walker, what's good?
Things are going great over here. I am loving all of the UNCA basketball stuff going on. I'm with you. Go Bulldogs. We had an awesome Policy on Tap event yesterday, just to plug the chamber a little bit, where we heard from a lot of local people on the sports commission and UNCA basketball, and it was very informative. And we had some great beer. It was at White Labs. So I'm always happy to be at White Labs to have a beer.
White Labs is some of the best beer
for
in
a work
town.
event.
If you don't know what White Labs is, they supply like 90% or maybe more, 95% of the yeast to all the brewers in the nation, right? They have a headquarters here and one in San Diego, but they're really just like chemists and nerds. So they brew an unbelievable beer, rotating taps. And yeah, just check out White Labs next time you're in town.
Each beer on their menu is made with 2 different yeasts, and you can like taste the different flavors. So like one might taste like key lime and one might taste like lemon. It's really great.
It's cool. So sophisticated brewers like the guys at Archetype, they will do really interesting flavors and profiles through yeast as opposed to like the hops or other folks. I'm trying to think. The common thing is to do like a coffee stout, right? And brewers will literally pour coffee into like the mash for the beer to get that coffee flavor.
Yeah.
So they don't do those I don't want to call it a gimmick, but they don't add mix-ins and flavors through like raw product at Archetype. They do all their flavor profiles through yeast. So
very interesting.
Go to White
There's
Labs,
all sorts of
Archetype.
interesting. Yeah. Riverbend Malt.
Don't get me started on malt. You beat me to it, Jay Walker.
Oh goodness.
Okay, it's a bit of town.
Let's not get beer nerdy. We'll get
maybe another show. All right. Today we have with us Sarah Silverman and Sam Franklin, the co-founders of Outside Angle, a disruptive strategic consulting firm in change leadership. Where typical consultants niche down into an industry, Sarah and Sam have no expertise. Their agnostic approach to leadership management and their incredible tolerance for ambiguity sets this impressive firm of metacognates and former teachers apart. Let's learn about this unique methodology and talk some ship. Sarah and Sam, glad to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
So, Outside Angle. This is like being outside the box. What's with the name? What do you guys do? Give us a high level background.
I'm still honestly just appreciating the introduction about basically being introduced to someone who knows nothing
Yeah.
about anything, which I think is actually uh quite accurate and a great introduction to who we are and what we do.
Is
Yeah.
I mean, not that you know
It's
nothing. It's about the frameworks, the methodology, applying that in different settings, and that from our previous to podcast conversations is your secret sauce.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good jumping off point because I think that what both Sarah and I recognized is that there are so many inspiring leaders out there taking on great challenges, but so many of those meaningful undertakings fall apart in the process, and so many good ideas with the potential to make our world better never manifest because change is hard. And and so we started Outside Angle to help with that, and with the idea that we are not the necessarily the most qualified to tell the world or even any one community or organization exactly what target they should be aiming at, but rather to help them get there. And that because of the experiences that we had been fortunate to have in our lives, we had learned a lot about bringing groups of people through hard change. And and so that's really what we started Outside Angle to help people do.
What kind of projects do you guys engage in? Give us a taste of, like, are you working with a local? I'm trying to think. Our city's always hiring some consultant, right? For whether it's a homelessness study or a study on how to use ARPA funds. Like, do you go after municipalities? Do you go after nonprofits? Is it for
Yeah.
profits? Talk if you can. I don't know if you're comfortable name dropping, but like, what are the kind of projects and what are the kind of clients you're working on? Because it is purposely ambiguous and vague.
One of the things that Sarah and I talk about a lot with each other, and I think one of the things we both love about our jobs is that um, we both love to learn. Like we're just deeply curious people, and we get to work with leaders that are in really vulnerable moments. Leaders that are in a spot where their organization is changing around them and they're figuring out how to navigate that change. And that is the biggest thing all of our clients have in common. They cut across industries, they cut across sectors, um, and but the thing that they have in common is that they are in the midst of, and sometimes it's a really positive change scenario. So they're experiencing rapid growth, and other times it can be a more of a driving a big new initiative, or even experiencing a sort of a downside scenario where they're confronting a new reality around them and needing to pivot and
Mhm.
adapt. Um,
Or having to
and
deal with
so
a pandemic and suddenly having a remote workforce that you never had before. Those kind of changes that you can never plan for.
Yeah, and so our projects fall into a few categories, and then we from there we get into maybe some cool examples. But one category is really about helping the teams, the people perform through that change.
Mhm.
Another is focusing on really specific transition points when the window for change in an organization is open, but also people are at their most like
Mm.
hyper vulnerable. And so those could be like leadership
Sure,
transitions,
sure.
restructuring and reorgs. So that's kind of a second bucket.
Mhm.
And then the third category, um, which Sarah has really like um, led the way with some really big projects we call big ideas. And that's where we are taking like working with a client who has a vision hypothesis, like they have something big in mind that they want to do, but they don't necessarily know where to start. And we're helping them figure out, well, what's first, second, third? How do I bring the people around
Mm.
me along on this journey? And so we work with everyone from an after school uh, program, nonprofit, all the way to major public software company, and
Mhm.
and kind of everything in between. One of our recent clients is a quasi governmental organization that is building broadband infrastructure out across the entire state of Maine.
Cool.
So
Very cool.
So I feel like I'm just like constantly learning about all of these new industries and spaces. But the thing that's in common is the human factor, like that people piece, and how you help a team of people stick together and perform together through hard things.
There's got to be some kind of formative experience, because you and Sarah are just a wonderful team. I want to bring Sarah in to talk about your backgrounds, how you guys met, and like what is it about the similarities in your backgrounds that lead you to this very unique type of, I feel like it's almost unfair to call it consulting. Like that just seems, because I think people are kind of like, I don't know, I want to poo on consultants. But it is right, the change leadership mentality. I mean, this is pretty cutting edge. So like, how'd you guys even get here?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think it's worth noting that Sam and I didn't just sit down one day and think, you know what people need? They need teams, transitions, and big ideas. But instead, we each kind of followed unique pathways. Yes, they both included being educators and teaching, and I think that is in some ways foundational to how we both think about being learners and inspiring learners within the leaders that we work with and the teams we work with, et cetera. But Sam followed a pathway where he was really in it. He was an educator in some pretty high need areas. He was a sort of architect and leader implementing inside a couple of big organizations. And he, in having those experiences, discovered that he could identify what needed to happen, and he could build the process, and he could bring people along. But there, in the absence of someone stepping up to do that work, it was liable to fall apart. And he saw that happen in the places where he personally or others with his capacities couldn't operate very effectively, or just didn't have the background or skill set. I, on the other hand, followed a pathway where I was kind of on the outside. I worked in policy organizations. I worked with a variety of different consulting organizations, trying to help be that exterior scaffolding to navigate change. And people would really frequently define the problem as, I need a strategic plan. I need someone to do this research. I need someone to conduct a study and tell me that, I need X, Y, and Z solution. And I just do that, then all of my problems will be solved and things will be wonderful. And we both felt really frustrated by that we would do what we thought was pretty good work, like really extensive, deep research work. We would get to know people. We would try to make sure that anything we designed was really well aligned with the specific capacities of the leaders and organizations that we worked with. And yet they would struggle because they wouldn't have any support with the actual implementation and the change work that had to come with kind of taking the things that we help them create and bring them to fruition. And we realized that's largely because if you're going to change anything, you've got to change behavior. At the end of the day, any change comes down to individual humans changing what they do. And that's really, really hard. You think about at scale, what we're essentially asking people to do is en masse quit smoking. You imagine how challenging that is. Incredibly challenging, right? And yet much more doable than many people think. And so what we've tried to create in the structure of the organization that we have, which has evolved even in the last few years, we started during the pandemic, right? So the needs of and the context around us has evolved. But what we tried to create in our organization is the ability to help people build capacity and skills to navigate whatever those problems are, rather than anchoring on the current problem as the big problem that is going to open the doors to Shangri-La if they only fix it.
So I'm curious then, if you have like the secret sauce is in your frameworks, is that like intellectual property when you sit and engage with a partner, or is it I don't know, I feel like that's why people hire McKinsey typically, right? It's like you want like those Harvard educated and those frameworks. That's like their secret sauce. It's going to be reliable and consistent. Do you guys take like a similar, not similar, but adjacent kind of playbook?
I would say, I'll probably be the first to say there's no shortage of really smart people working on things and failing at them. And it's not because they're not smart. And so our model isn't about whether you're smart enough or whether you have the right background or the right training or education. It's about whether you're able to take content and bring people along with that content. And so, yes, we have 3 core kind of models that we use, and they're
Mhm.
incredibly, almost shockingly simple. We have a universal change leadership framework. We have a universal manager competency framework, and we have a
Mhm.
success and sustainability framework. And we can anchor all of the work we do, whether we're working with a brand new organization that's one person trying to scale up, or we're working with a 5,000 person organization or bigger that's trying to pivot or navigate a sort of new elements of their existence. So to some extent, I'll say yes, the frameworks are
Yeah.
part of our currency because of their
Uh-huh.
simplicity, but it is largely what we do is use that to translate between what people think are overwhelming challenges that they face into actual doable steps they can take to achieve the outcomes that they're looking for.
So I'm trying really hard to not be triggered by the word competency, because that you know how I feel about competencies in a good way, but it's a rabbit hole that I'm not going to take this podcast down. Instead, I want to harp on the ability to take content and share that information. I think that goes back to your educator roots and Sam's educator roots, and you all have 6, 7 employees. Is that right? Maybe 10. Do you
We
is
have
is the
we have a team that includes a handful of full-time employees and then a big network of
okay?
collaborators that we bring in that do help with some of the content expertise. So we sometimes we do actually need some content expertise, and we bring those folks along.
Well, I wonder if how many of your employees, whether they're contractors or the core team, also have an education background. And tell us, like, if you all are the um, experts in change leadership and company culture, that's your area of expertise. I'll give you that one. Do you eat your own dog food? How do you instill those values and those practices internally while you're preaching them externally?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, I love that you said culture, because I think that above that, kind of underlying all of our work and the way that we approach it, is that what we're really trying to do, whether explicitly or not, is help our clients build resilient, anti-fragile cultures in which change is an ally and not a periodic adversary.
Mm.
And that they have systems and culture that are designed to change. And this is like the 5-year strategic plan may have a place, but the idea that in the ambiguous, volatile, dynamic work environment that we're all living in today, it is very difficult to roll out a red carpet for people and just say, follow this. Like here's the plan. Everybody just go and do what's in the plan. And when you don't have that kind of a plan to anchor on, culture matters even more. Like, because the culture is establishing and setting the conditions for people's behavior, people's expectations of each other. And so I'd love to unpack that a little bit more, but that's exactly what we're trying to do with our own team and with our own culture. And that's why, and I do think there's an element of like an educator, as someone who, as a learner, as someone who knows how to learn and teach and synthesize. And these are skills that really, really matter in these kind of like very dynamic environments. And we are like, so, well, I'll stop there.
So sorry, fine. Let me double down on that then.
Yeah.
The common elements, so much I want to dig into. So many follow-up questions. All right, first, you brought up 5-year plans, and Sarah one day said to me, you were approached to do a 5-year plan. You said, nope, not going to do it. So could we first touch on that one, and we'll get into more follow-up? But because every nonprofit I work with, whether I'm as a volunteer or coming through our door, Venture Asheville, that want help, ever since you told me that, I started telling people, I don't think you need a 5-year plan. Like, I know that's what people think they need, but really you need consistent values, guidelines, maybe some big goals. Like, that's good.
Yeah.
Like what I think you all do, and let me know if I'm wrong, is by changing the behavior and the culture of the organization, people have a common destination and they have the autonomy to operate towards those goals. If it's that apparent and consistent, you don't need to over plan or over program people. They know what to do, and everyone knows the direction they're going in.
Yeah.
So hit me
My
on
take,
why no 5-year plans.
my take on the 5-year plan is like, it's a habit, right? It's there's structural inertia around it. Funders want to fund a 5-year plan because it's a very concrete deliverable. It's a thing that can look very impressive, gives everybody a common understanding of the current state of play. There are upsides to the work that goes into something like a 5-year plan, but the challenge is that the nature of a 5-year plan is that it sort of suggests that it can predict the next 5 years. Well, think about what's happened over the course of just the last 3 years. Obviously, COVID has been a major game changer. But even thinking about the rate at which new ideas and information are being produced, right? Like 10 years ago, Google put out something saying, hey, by the way, in the last year, more content has gone up on the internet than existed in the previous period of time in which content was created. So the pace of change is incredibly rapid, and our take is it's only growing. And so given that, it would be unreasonable to expect that you can predict, frankly, what's going to happen next year, and especially not what's going to happen in 5 years. But what will be certain is that things are going to change. Context is going to change. The issue that you're going to face is going to come up. You're going to need to be able to deal with it and then be able to move on from that. And if you create space and create opportunities for people to put the question of whether now is the right time to change or what should we be changing into its right kind of buckets, an organization can operate much, much more effectively. People are able to anchor on a core kind of vision target. Our change leadership framework, as I said, is like shockingly simple, right? It's vision, process, problem solving, and relationships. Those are the quadrants. When people have clarity of vision, it doesn't really matter what's happening tomorrow versus 10 years from now.
Yeah.
You have a vision for what the organization should be doing, right? When you have process, it's not just I'm like sort of dogmatically translating the vision into the next step and the next step and the next step. As Sam likes to say, the process can be incredibly creative and it can be really fun and you can learn a lot from it. And we as an organization, to kind of get to the question you asked about how do you eat your own dog food, we try to learn a lot. We try to be incredibly transparent with our team about what we're learning and why we think we need to either change or make shifts. We try to apply our own frameworks internally for our own sort of progress monitoring cycles, and then think about how building that capacity in the organizations we work with opens up lots of new opportunities for them not to follow the same old, which, as I like to describe it, is something where people develop a 5-year plan. It may or may not still be relevant by the time it's actually complete. It could be outdated in the 9 months it takes to create it. And then the idea is that you'll work against that plan for 5 years and basically build up a change debt. Like, instead of changing when you should, you're just like increasing that debt, and then 5 years from now, you're gonna try to pay off all that debt again and do the same thing that didn't really work very well before. If you do cycles along the way, you don't have to incur any debt. You actually can change and be sort of at the cutting edge all along, and that's why we really orient people toward a framework rather than a 5-year plan.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, I want to jump in on this if I can, because Sarah just made me think about two words that I want to talk about quickly. One word is hypotheses, and the other is uncertainty. So we use the word hypotheses a lot with our clients for many of the reasons that Sarah discussed. Is that to say that you don't need a 5-year plan is, to be clear, is not to say you don't need a vision. You need a clear vision, and it needs to be developed in some level of detail to put a point where people can see themselves in it. But we think about that vision as a hypothesis that is constantly evolving. And if you think about your process and your vision as hypotheses, that really has big implications for how you have to organize your meeting cycles, communicate with your team, because in that environment, people have to be regularly coming back together to realign. It's like everybody's going out, doing stuff, learning, and then coming back together and saying, what do we learn? Let's realign. Let's chart the course for the next 3 months, the next 6 months. And so part of what we do in our team performance practice is that we help build in those cycles of progress monitoring, of making hypotheses, testing, and then coming together, like regrouping, and then setting the next course so that change is ongoing and we are all like a part of it, So change management is embedded in the work. Like
Of everyone in the
the
organization, not just the top. It's every single person there.
Yeah,
Right.
and change management isn't some other thing that you're doing. Change management is what basically everybody's doing. It's kind of built into the culture. And then I want to talk just real quick about the uncertainty. So if you're a leader and you're embracing this kind of idea of nimble change, ongoing change, one of the things that can be difficult about that is people really struggle with uncertainty. It is one of the most difficult places for people to live. And oftentimes organizations will settle for suboptimal solutions just to resolve uncertainty for their employees and for their stakeholders. And so it becomes a really key skill of holding space for uncertainty, like introducing uncertainty in purposeful doses and then resolving it. But it is also really important to have these process anchors, because if people can't count on their vision being consistent, or they can't count on their goals not changing, they need something they can count on. And that's where the process can help, right? That's where we can create anchors where people can say, I can't count on exactly, what we'll be doing, but I know that at the end of the week, we're going to regroup and we're going to realign, and I'm going to know that I can count on that. And so we really want to create things that people can anchor on in the midst of other things shifting.
Yeah, it's about your zone of control too, right? Sarah and I talk about stoicism exactly in this thread of how you deal with uncertainty or tolerance for ambiguity, or your ability to focus yet adapt at all times.
Yeah.
Can you give an example, if you're comfortable, if it's not going to violate any issues with your clients? Like, what is one of the, I don't know if it's a vision statement, but like, what is the result of that vision work for one of your clients? And like, if you could share what that actually means, so we can get really tactical.
Yeah, I was hoping you would go there, actually, because I think that's the natural next place in my mind is, let's talk about leadership and how leadership changes in a world where you're paying more attention to change, and where you're building an organization that's oriented toward change. So think about kind of old idea of leadership, is like a leader sits at the head of an organization and is responsible for making decisions, having the vision, being the visionary, making decisions, telling everybody what to do, solving problems all the time. Well, what's problematic about that? How could one person possibly have all of the context and information they need to make really good decisions? And also, as an organization grows, how does that take it full advantage of the capacities that a sort of well-rounded leadership team has? So instead of leaders being in a position where they have to know everything, they have to be enough in the weeds to be able to answer hard questions. The shift here is that leaders instead have two very important but consistent jobs that they have to play. Number one is always establishing context and reminding people of the vision. So that shifts your work away from people come to you and they say, I have this problem, and you say, well, here's the answer, to people share with you, hey, I learned this from the front line. Here's the implication that I think that has. And you then help categorize, where does that fit relative to the vision? Is that the direction that we're taking this organization? Is that the direction that we're taking this team? And that it becomes much more of a dialogue or a shared conversation across the entire team. To your point, change is everybody's responsibility. And then the second piece is reminding people constantly how we're going to go about doing that work, right? We've created a way of doing this work, and that's culture and it's process. So how are we going to make sure that we're paying attention to the context that we're gathering? How are we going to make sure that the people who should be or can be making the decisions are making those? And how are we going to be doing that on a cadence so that we're not constantly having the left hand make one decision and the right another, and then the left another, and getting people sort of confused in this cycle? How can we maintain a degree of organization around it? As Sam likes to put it, it's holding the appropriate space, which I know is kind of a buzz term, but we mean that really concretely as holding space in an organized cycle of thinking, decision making.
So this sounds, I'm not going to lie, pretty complex. And you said your frameworks are surprisingly simple. And one of your tenets is the Tao of simplicity. Why don't you tell us a little more about that and how that philosophy plays into the work internally and externally at Outside Angle?
Yeah, I'll start, and then I'll let Sam share about his thinking on this too. So on one hand, it is simple, right? It's our frameworks are not more than 5 elements. They're either 4 or 5 elements total. And Jeffrey, as you know, there are lots and lots and lots of tools that we apply in these spaces. Many of them have lots of items, and we evaluate people's personalities. We evaluate their leadership structure or their sort of leadership inclinations. We evaluate their self-beliefs. We have all kinds of things that do a lot of data gathering and try to suss out the who are you, what do you believe, how do you operate, and those things can be really, really valuable. And in fact, there certainly are tools that aren't that great, but I would say like right now we're flush with lots of different tools that can help us get really in the weeds on a lot of things, and they can be very right, but they also sometimes take a lot of energy and effort to try to implement. They are difficult to apply in terms of day-to-day decision making, and often we find that organizations kind of get out of control in terms of when they're going to actually conduct these instruments and assessments. Luckily, I think in cases like folks in Asheville, they might have organizations like you all to help them with that. But in most cases, trying to undertake lots of different sort of tools and evaluations gets out of hand and distracts from sort of the core work. So the simplicity comes from how do we organize all of the possible ways that we could be like absolutely correct to get directionally right, find balance and complementarity across the domains that we know are necessary to organize change. And then instead of trying to get perfect at any one of those, we don't need perfection in vision, we don't need perfection in process, build an ability to do the work necessary to advance vision, to advance process, to advance problem solving and relationships, for example. And so from where we sit, that simplicity makes it possible to take the first step, but there's also many, many layers below that can get much more complex. And I would say that's why we work with organizations as partners. And I appreciated that you're sort of averse to the term consultant. We definitely do not follow in the footsteps of many consultants who have a good reputation. But we consider ourselves to be organizational partners who help build the ability of leaders and teams to do the work that needs to happen. And then hopefully we build ourselves out of business, at least with that particular organization. But we recognize that there's a complexity and there's the need to create additional capacity to get work done, especially initially in the short order, and then kind of scaffold and pass that back to leaders over time.
I love Vygotsky scaffolding. I want to switch gears and hit Sam with a question. Sam, let's say I'm having a meeting of a bunch of my founders, and I begin by saying, I want you all to know this is a safe space. Am I reinforcing fragility in my founders? Because you guys practice dynamism and anti-fragility.
Yeah.
So I would love if you want to hit us or give us a background, what those concepts are. Am I doing the wrong thing? What does it mean to build an anti-fragile community or anti-fragile workforce?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, back to the point that like that we're operating in environments where there's not the linear like step-by-step plan in the way that there used to be. So in that kind of context, feedback is critical. Like people have to be comfortable with speaking to each other directly and clearly, and really engaging in productive conflict and struggle, right? And so, but psychological safety is important, and it's part of actually what creates the conditions for that. Like you want people to be in an environment where they feel comfortable sunshining their mistakes. And like, so this isn't about creating an environment where anti-fragile means that you get berated and criticized when you mess up, and you should be tough and like, but it is more about resilience, honesty, trust, and change as something that you expect as a reality and not resist as an adversary, but I love what you brought up of like you being in a room with founders, because I know that a lot of your audience, a lot of your community is startup leaders who are, who are tackling, you know, new ventures. And a couple of things that I would say to them. One is that building systems at the right time is like a key practice and a difficult thing to do. We work with one company called Zubeen, and the leader is an incredible CEO. They have built a reading platform that helps people track and motivate reading in community. It's an awesome product and an awesome company and awesome team. And one of the things that I think has been remarkable about watching Felix, the CEO's leadership, is like not building systems too soon and not building systems too late. Oftentimes we are brought in to do the work that we do when there's a problem, or when the culture needs to be fixed, or when change has gone off the rails. And that's harder work. Proactively building in change cycles and change process into your organization's DNA is easier to do, but rarely done. And so that, I think, is one thing that's been really, really cool to see. And then one other thing that I would say is that the way that you have hard conversations, and this speaks to your point about like what is safety and what is not, the way that you engage in hard conversations and do hard things goes a long way towards defining your culture. Like your culture is not something that sits over here and like it's the way that it's your schedule and your lunch policy and your like, people are watching the leader when they have to do something hard and seeing how they do it. Do they do it with you know, with dignity, with empathy, with courage? Like those times when you have to do something hard, those are the opportunities to say what your culture is, you know? And so, sometimes we've seen situations where, you know, people build entire systems in their organization to avoid one hard conversation.
Fascinating.
You
I can
know,
totally relate to some groups I work with on the nonprofit side. Absolutely.
Yeah.
we have literally talked a client out of a partnership with us through like talking about it and unpacking the problem and helping them realize that they actually just need to go have a couple of hard conversations. And that's what they need to do. Not build a whole big new complicated you know, system.
On this question of psychological safety, I think it's also, to paraphrase Daniel Kahneman, humans are capable of an almost infinite amount of self-delusion. And I think for leaders in particular, we can really easily tell ourselves stories like, oh, I don't want to hurt that person's feelings, or I'll demotivate them if I tell them the truth, right? But at the end of the day, the question of what safe space means or what psychological safety means is a question of how do you want people to show up and interact with each other in your organization? And if you are not building the capability within yourself to be able to do that, you're not going to be able to lead the kind of organization or the culture that you really want.
The work you all do is it's just fascinating. And I'm picturing, like, if you ever met a founder or a CEO who just like gets off on the hard things, like who's like, yes, I got a hard conversation today. And then that motivates them for the opportunity to step up as if it's something performative to like, flexing those skills that are just like, where do you learn those skills? You know, you don't teach you that in any soft skills course. It's not like, you know, your 10 tips. There's no LinkedIn or Linda course for how to do really hard things. I just think that we don't have time to dig into all that today. But if you are listening to this podcast and you're into what you're hearing from Sam and Sarah, I want to mention that Outside Angle is our gold sponsor at the Entrepreneur Resilience Summit on March 29th at the Collider. And you can see Sam in person moderating one of our panels, which is on how to build resilient cultures and teams. He'll be moderating with a handful of founders who lead some of the best most highly awarded company cultures in the Asheville area. I want to end Before we give it to Jay Walker here, a new game show we came up with yesterday called Seed, Shop, or Shutter. So I'm going to name, given that you all are on the vanguard of change, looking at emerging technologies. What would you seed fund? What would you shop? Where would you be a consumer? And what are you shuttering? Shutter down. We are not going there. That's a bad investment because this is kind of a VC angel community. So we're playing Seed, Shop, or Shutter. You're going to get 3 technologies. You guys, this is like the old MFK game. I'm not going to get into all that, but you guys know where this is going, right? Seed, Shop, or Shutter. Your 3 emerging technologies are OpenAI, ChatGPT, all that venture itself, OpenAI specifically. VR headsets, which is actually an industry, not an individual company, and the technology of blockchain, not crypto, blockchain. Seed, Shop, or Shutter. Where you want to start?
This is where it become really evident to bring the conversation full circle, just that really don't know anything about it. What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm a occasional homebrewer. So can we have a different game that's back to white labs and tasting yeast instead? No, I'm just kidding. No, I think so. This is my. I frankly find that it's really interesting and a little disappointing, but helpful probably, that like one of the first instances of blockchain application has been cryptocurrency, because I think about blockchain as being one of the most robust fundamental technologies for a digital era in which humans have less and less control, right? Like, so we're
thinking about where we have like our own epistemic truth circles, where you have your truth and I have mine, and they're both supposed to be equal but different sets of facts. Whereas blockchain says, no. We validate everything across our nodes. So I think that's understated. And I agree with you. Crypto kind of sucked all the air out of the room when it came to blockchain technology.
Yeah, so I'm actually pretty bullish on blockchain. I would see better instances of blockchain.
So long-term view of blockchain. Okay.
Yep.
Then Shop or Shutter, OpenAI, which is ChatGPT and DALL-E 2 and all these incredible AI technologies, and VR headsets.
Huh. So for me, I'm shuttering VR headsets because I want fully immersive environments without a headset.
Okay.
So whoever's listening, work on that. And then
so
I'm
then
shopping
OpenAI,
I'm
using it now,
OpenAI.
Using it actively. Okay.
Yeah. So Sam and I use a technology platform called Notion, which some of you are probably familiar with. And Notion recently
podcast.
There you go. Notion recently rolled out an AI feature, and we've had incredible fun playing with that. So we're like consuming that a little bit, we're shopping it. Yeah.
Cool.
Speaking of fully immersive experiences, Sarah and her wife Alicia just welcomed their third child.
Yeah, mazel tov.
And as we were preparing for that to happen, we were one day thinking that, what if there was like a camera in the labor and delivery room that broadcasts like 360 views around that so that you could deliver the baby wherever you wanted in the world, or
the universe.
Or in the universe.
I've been in a delivery OR twice, and that was enough realism for me. That was immersive enough. I got my fill of immersive child delivery.
Imagine how your wife feels.
Well said, Jay Walker. Way to remind me to not make everything about me in my life.
Yeah. My wife gave birth about 2 weeks ago, and I'm really exhausted. So I can understand where you're coming from, Jeffrey.
You got a meal train or anything you need us to send you a brisket or something?
I'll tell you what. I would like is addresses where I can send all the carbs people have been bringing to our house.
Send them back.
It was like, the other day, my wife woke up and she was like, "Wow, I'm really hungry. Could you grab me a snack from the kitchen?" And I was like Bubba from Forrest Gump, listing off all the bread products that are available. Butter croissants, sugar croissants, regular bagels.
Before I let you go, I hope that people listening to this are inspired by truly the vanguard of management and change leadership that you all are at. I know you have a couple of job openings. So do you want to plug like what you look for in employees, and if people want to apply with you, where do they go? How to find you online, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So we are all, I think of us as always hiring. We are always looking for people who are really inspired by the idea that we can, instead of teaching people to do the same thing they already do better, we can teach them to do a whole new thing that enables them to be successful for the long term. We work primarily with social change or social impact focused organizations across the spectrum. Some are nonprofit, some are for-profit, some are public sector. And so we're always looking for people who enjoy learning, who are creative, who are thoughtful, who want to show up and be part of a group of people that work as a true team, and who are always testing and refining our own hypotheses within the organization as much as we are with clients. So people who are excited about working hard and helping clients achieve things they never thought possible should absolutely reach out, check out our website at outsideangle.com. And click over to the job postings. But even before you do that, take a look at our team values and our summary of the work that we do to learn a little bit more about who we are and how we really operate.
That's just one thing. I don't know if it's a real benefit, but you guys have some of the best swag. I have been getting a yellow outside angle shirt, which I love. And my outside angle coffee cup I have here in the office, it is probably the most stolen mug here at the Chamber of Commerce. I always see people grabbing it.
It's a good one.
Fantastic.
All right.
And
All right.
personally,
Well, we'll send a little bit more your way and certainly make sure that.
I saw Sam in a vest, a North Face. This is the third day in a row I've been able to see Sam Franklin's face. This is the most like direct contact we've had in 4 years, and it's been a wonderful week, Sam. So I want to thank you for how much time we've been able to spend together this week.
Thank you.
Early mornings, late nights, everything in between. It's been great. We have a tradition on our show that the final question goes to Juliana Moonwalker, to our guests. So Jay, hit Sam and Sarah with a doozy.
What is the primary issue you see with leaders? Like, what is the primary sticking point that is hardest for them to change? Is it something wrapped around generational differences? Is it an ego thing? What do you see the most?
Trust. That's for me, that's an easy answer. It fundamentally comes down to the challenge that leaders face trusting themselves and their own capacity and intuition, and the trust that they cultivate across their leadership teams, and the ability to be honest, candid, and forthcoming with each other. That people will often say one thing, but their behavior portends a total different orientation toward trust. And so actually the biggest impediment we face is not a thing. It's not a particular issue. It's not really something that is like outside of the leaders that come to us. It's often something that sits inside of them. And we try diligently to work on that as much as the specific problem presenting itself.
Love that. And coming back to our framework of vision, process, relationships, and problem solving, one of the things that I think we've seen again and again is that when leaders are in really vulnerable moments, they gravitate to the place where they're most comfortable. So if they're a visionary, they vision. If they're process oriented, they go in that process space and they hide out in there. And the more intense the change scenario is that they're faced with, the more that can be true. And so suddenly the result of that is that your greatest strength, the things that people view as some of their best skills, become the source of their biggest vulnerabilities. And so what we really try to do is help them, their teams, and their projects balance across those domains. You don't need a 10 vision. You need a 7 vision coupled with a 7 process, not a 10 vision coupled with a 2 process, right? And so a lot of it, I think, is like tacking against their own tendencies and their own, and that's something that I feel like if Sarah and I have any strengths, I would say it is just that we're not the 10s in any one of those domains. I don't think anyone would say like I'm the most visionary leader they've worked with or the best at relationships, but I think through a very purposeful effort, we've tried to balance ourselves across those areas and be really well-rounded generalists and strong, balanced leaders. And I think that we're just really lucky that that's sort of what the conditions are calling for these days. And so there's kind of this alignment that fits.
That's awesome. You guys are
Yeah.
incredible guests. You're incredible minds.
Great. Yeah.
Organizations are lucky to get to work with you. And I thank you so much for talking ship with us. Check out Outside Angle online on their website and come meet Sam at the Entrepreneur Resilience Summit. Thanks again for talking ship.
Catch you later, Shiphead.
Thank you.